One person. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. So we will now call this regular board meeting to order. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As you see before you, you have the agenda. If there are any changes, I would entertain a motion to talk about the agenda.
I'll move the motion to accept the agenda as it was presented.
Thank you. Any discussion? See none, all in favor of adopting the agenda as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. So now, sorry, wait a second. Oh, sorry. So next item on our agenda is executive session. So I will now call executive session to order. At this time, we will recess the regular meeting for an executive session pursuant to ORS 192.6602F to consider information or records that are exempt by law from public inspection.
All right, we are now back in regular session and we will be in recess until 6:45. Okay.
No sé cómo esté.
Hi, Krista.
Borro de esta.
Krista, I don't think you have your microphone connected. Cause it doesn't give you the option to unmute you. You may need to log out and log back in. And when you log back in, it should prompt you to connect your sound. You might wanna try that first. Or unmute it, just. Oh, yeah. Hey, Krista. You should be able to unmute yourself now.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. For those who are online and in person, we are returning from our recess. So we will be moving on to our next agenda item, is agenda item number 3, which is public comments. And it appears that we do have public comments. So I would like to invite Kathy Minzer to come share public comment.
Good evening, board members, Superintendent Larios, administrators, fellow colleagues, and community members. My name is Kathy Minzer. I've had the pleasure of working for the district for the past 9 years, and this is my 24th year in education. I've also had the pleasure this year to begin serving as the special education area representative for the Woodburn Education Association. I was in attendance at a recent WA executive board meeting when the WA president shared a response regarding a request for information from the district. The inquiry was regarding MAP testing in the district, with one of the requested items being any data documenting an improvement in student performance since MAP was universally administered compared to years when this was not the case. The president then shared the response from the HR director, which was, this comparison is not readily available and will take approximately 3 hours of director's time to compile. Please confirm that you want this information and that you will reimburse the district for 3 hours of director's time for $118.90. He believed he was merely sharing this information in order to get the approval from the union to spend the $118.90 to get this data. I, on the other hand, dropped my jaw in disbelief that this information, as HR said, was not readily available. I could not imagine a world in which a district would not compile the resulting data from the test administration to chart student growth, monitor cohorts, assess successful failures of curriculum, etc. After all, is that not why the district uses this instrument? Is it not intended to measure and predict growth over time? Would it not follow that the data would be used to inform decisions regarding instructional practices, curriculum mapping, etc.? Perhaps I have misinterpreted HR's response. Surely the teaching and learning department records MAP data. As the district invests over $50,000 per year to administer MAP, would it not be in the district's best interest to compare results before and after MAP testing to determine if this is a cost-effective purchase? Educators are required to keep data for many reasons: developing student learning goals, tracking growth towards these goals, planning through data cycles, and adjusting strategies according to the data. When we discuss topics such as special education placements, support staff placements, requests for supplemental materials, etc., the response is generally along the lines of, what does the data tell us? Great question. So we ask again, what does the data tell us about student learning as reflected in MAP test results? Are we getting better data since administration began? Have we answered questions and adjusted our practices or curriculum to increase growth based on the data in ways we could not before its use? Does the data show that through MAP testing, we have a vast improvement in measuring student growth and have corresponding increases in growth compared to growth before MAP testing was initiated? When I need to discuss with my new teacher mentees on how to use MAP data, I wish I had a more complete picture than I do today. Thank you.
And next, I'd like to invite Tony Song.
Good evening. Through the years, as the composition of the school board has changed, and in the presence of multiple superintendents, I've been up here on a regular basis making statements about the board's priorities. As such, perhaps your reaction to my presence here tonight is not him again. Be that as it may, we at WEA want to help nurture a culture where educator feedback and yes, criticism is taken seriously. Unfortunately, we are not there yet. One example of this was the board's recent action to stealthily hire a permanent superintendent without ample notice to the public and without an opportunity for stakeholders to provide current meaningful input. Well, we certainly want to congratulate the superintendent who's in the position and wish him the very best. As we've stated clearly from the beginning, it's the way the process was handled that we were objecting to, not the individual. Earlier this year, I gave a statement on mandatory math testing of students, questioning the usefulness of administering these assessments 3 times a year, asking how much we pay out of school funds for the right to do this, and asking, most crucially, for data to show that this testing regimen has in any way been beneficial to students. I've learned since then that WSD has paid upwards of $50,000 annually since the 21-22 term for the right to administer MAP to our students. Information is still pending on whether student performance has improved since MAP was implemented. One would imagine that if such data existed, we would have known about it by now. One also wonders why such data has not already been compiled, if improved achievement was theoretically the point of this in the first place. WSD staff, the Woodburn community, and yes, students have the right to know not only whether their taxpayer funds are being used wisely, but whether the amount of hours that are spent testing, as opposed to teaching, provide any worthwhile return on this investment. One major component of evaluations as educators has been whether we are communicating clear objectives to our students. Which begs the question, what is the actual objective of persisting with this enormously time-consuming testing regimen beyond merely collecting reams of data that collect mold in a vast database? It's a perfectly simple question, a response to which has yet to be communicated. It's time at long last to have an open and honest dialogue about whether continuing this course is a wise idea, and if it isn't, to drop it. $50,000 a year might seem like a drop in the bucket, but when schools are struggling to assign assistants to classrooms that fall under contractual class size limits, it's time to look more closely at our financial priorities. Furthermore, I've advocated repeatedly for the implementation of a curriculum where the written word and creative arts are given equal status with the so-called priority standards that these tests are cleared for. And once again, I've yet to see evidence that any of these suggestions have been taken seriously by this body. I implore you to once again listen to your educators, listen to your community, take their concerns to heart, and conduct yourselves as if the public trust is something you must earn each and every day. Thank you.
Thank you for those who participated in the comment this evening. Next, we're going to move on to the next item on our agenda, which is reports, and the first item is board reports. And so this is the time where board members share what they participated in and how they are moving the district mission.
Well, I guess I'll start. Was able to, being newer to the board, was able to take part in the OSBA conference up in Portland a couple weeks ago, which was very intriguing, very informational, it was great. The speaker was amazing. And so just to see that aspect of the workings and the gears of what it takes to be part of the board was educational for me, to say the least. And so it was, yeah, I really enjoyed that. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to follow up with anything in regards to the district just because of the holidays and certain things. So, but yeah, we're looking to participate and get things done, to understand more, to be able to, like you said, move the vision forward and whatnot.
I also did the OSBA. Also joined the OSBA conference this year, and I agree with you. The speakers were great. The workshops that I attended was there were timely for what's going on statewide. And then gathering with other board members from the state that are going through similar huddles that we have been through. So it was just definitely a great opportunity to be together with the board and then participate in the workshops.
Well, I thoroughly, the Oregon State Board Association Conference. It was enormous knowledge. We saw met some amazing role models of school board members, superintendents, and got some great feedback from them. Very knowledgeable. As a new board member, it was vast information, rules and regulations, and also we got to spend some time with our board members and on a on a personal level and connecting with them. So, and yeah, with the holidays and had not a chance to check on the activities of the community to try to engage, but there are upcoming activities that I plan to attend, such as the library, Santa event. So look forward to that.
Yeah, I'll echo a lot of what my colleague said about the OSBA conference, something that we attend twice a year, and it's really informative to be able to talk with other school board members from across the state. And hear from folks across the country who are dealing with some of the same issues that we're all dealing with. Not only that, I think we took a lot away from our regional roundtable, talking about issues specific to Marion County. I fall back on that a lot. There's a lot of passion here in Marion County and Willamette Valley. It's different than other places across the state. So it's nice being able to talk about colleagues of neighboring districts. And I also commend the board because we don't always have everyone moving board there. Like out of all the years that I've been on the board, it's been like 50-50 or so on average would go up. So it's nice that we were all able to attend and everything's management.
Thank you for sharing. I also attended the conference early this November, as well as the multi-tier training that was, I think, end of October, maybe early November. In addition, I also negotiated the superintendent contract that is on today's agenda, so that's been part of my work. So it's the last report. All right, item number 2, Office of the Superintendent. Human Resources.
I was going to invite Director Tucker up to join us, and over the past few months, we've had opportunity for each of the departments, each of the directors to share aspects of how they are putting into practice and actualizing the components of our strategic plan. Tonight, we're going to hear from Director Tucker about some of the work that's being done in regards to creating and supporting the work through this group to be a leader in recruiting, hiring, developing, and retaining qualified staff that are reflective and supportive of our school communities.
Good evening. Good evening. So tonight I'm talking about a few different things, a little bit about what our department does and what the department does. Some demographic information about our staff and our students. And some information around retention and different things that the district does as a whole. That I think contribute to the retention of our employees. So the first,
Sorry. I was trying to get rid of that.
I don't want to say the pictures. My first chart here is describing the staff map as a lead specialist. And just kind of the breakdown of how we work. Each staff member have a few different buildings or departments. And each of those departments have both classified and licensed staff and confidential staff. The reason for that is so they're all cross-trained. They work with the licensed CBA, classified CBA, and the working conditions. So if somebody is gone for the day, we can always cover and answer those questions for staff. And just provide coverage for each other in that way. At the bottom, just a few items in process, new hires, resignations. We manage all the leave out of our office. So if somebody applies for FEMLA, OFLA, or the new PLO leaves, that gets processed all through our office. And then contract maintenance. I work with the negotiations through that process as well, help support that. That's the team. And here are just some examples of what we do. In the center on the top, when we go to different job fairs, career fairs, we go to different colleges. Just this fall, we've been to ESU, we've been to UFO, Western Oregon, and a couple other events. And then the fun pictures are just, we like to have them here in the office. We like it to be welcoming in our office. And just greet all the new employees and our current employees on a daily basis with a smile and some food quite often. This is just a snapshot of where we are today. Our current staff numbers, about 700 employees, but that does not include coaches, incidental, a lot of those in the seasonal work, short-term kind of workers. So with all of those folks as well, we're putting about 775, 800 employees as a whole. The section there with admin, supervisory, and confidential, that's a group that includes directors, principals, confidential staff, and supervisors. So that's kind of all-inclusive group that are under a working conditions document outside of our license group that's in this under a union contract or classified. And then at the bottom, as of the date when I was studied to run this, we have 5,270 students.
You know, that's ADMR or ADMW.
I believe that's our, I don't make sure we can make it. Okay. So this next graph is also just Nova versus current data. Just comparing the demographics of our students versus our staff. And as you can see, the two larger groups are our Hispanic Latino group and then our white group. And on the right side, you can see the actual numbers that relate to the bar graph. So students, about 86% of students are Hispanic or Latino versus 40% of staff. And then the other large group are white students and staff at 11.5 for students, but 56.37%. And that was just ran in the next graph just gives an idea of over the last several years. And I'm looking specifically at our largest group again, but it shows a little bit of growth in both increase in students from 83% up to 87% versus staff increasing from 33 to 40%. So there has been a slight increase over the years. Are there any questions on that stuff so far?
So you mentioned that there's been a slight increase, what it?
I think primarily when we post jobs and when we process the applications, I think we do make a priority of requesting bilingual staff. When we do that, so we put that as a preferred, and sometimes it's a required for different positions. And so I think over time, naturally, that those numbers are just growing. So since there's a dual language for Hispanics and then there's dual language for Russians. So, what, you know, how you have this ratio for this, the staff, what category would that they fall under? The multiracial? That's
I believe it would fall under white.
under white?
I'd have to double check that in the SW with the those.
Yeah,
This is how they're broke down on the ODE report. So you can pull, if I go back. This one here. If you go back to ODE with the state report cards, the data that's used in here, is pulled directly from that. So we can pull the detail, and get the specifics for you. Even if it broke out differently. This chart is giving you an idea of what our turnover rate is. I did take out the 2 years of COVID. Just because those rates were showing like 2% and so they were really skewing the data. I think the rest of these years would be pretty consistent and represents a normal full school year, what that turnover may look like. This is looking specifically at licensed staff. And so as you can see, about 10%, just over 10% in the last couple of years is where we stand. And doing some research in Oregon over a 3-year span, they said the average is about 36%. And so we're at that or around that or just a little bit under that. So we're pretty consistent with what the state average is.
For this,
So the resignations, like, are those broken down as to what they're about? Is it like some people, employees, no matter where, teachers specifically for this purpose, you know, disciplinary action or resignations because they found another job? Or is it just all encompassed into just resignations?
The resignations piece is broken down a little bit. So we do have it coded where if they report to us, if they went to another school district within the state, or sometimes they'll report to us that they're getting out of education altogether. So there are just a small handful of codes that we can look at for that. I did pull out the retirement directly, and then any temporary type employees because they just kind of skew those real numbers. We are implementing an exit interview. We're going to try to see if that garners some more of that information. I think people have different opinions as to how truthful people might be in that, you know, but I think it'll be good data regardless. And so we are pushing that out as well to help try to break that down.
what would fall under the other category?
Oh, that's what's left after, so that's basically the total, that's minusing those off, so total resignations are 44, but taking out retirement and temporary is what's left, so that's the only place that they go to another district. Or leave the state or leave the profession that are included, and then there's a few that we just don't have an answer. So they don't give us any information, so.
So licensed staff includes staff at the building level and district.
This is licensed staff that are under the CBA. So it'd be mainly the teachers, mentors, psychologists, counselors, but it would not include, say, principals, administrators, that group, that would be outside of that.
Okay. I guess my question is, if there's departments, would licensed staff work under those departments? Or is this mostly staff in buildings?
This is mostly staff, it's a majority, yes.
I guess so my question was kind of leading to if we had licensed staff in or working under departments, do you look at the data as far as if there's more staff leaving from a certain department
From
or
certain
things like
departments.
that?
Um,
To try to figure out what's happening?
right, we have not, it's not set up as far as collecting data that way. I think naturally, because those, resignations and those postings come through our office, we notice a trend if it's like inside a building, but it's not captured in the system in that way.
But that's something that you can.
Yeah.
And Director Better mentioned the exit interview, that's not really a practice to help us gather more information about our people, potentially.
And that is one of the questions, and that is, what building, what's your role in the district and those sorts of things. And then also asking, trying to also find out what other supports we provide that were important to the employee. So whether we're also doing good versus, can you tell us what, why you left, sort of thing, because sometimes, and oftentimes. Will, the letter will say, my spouse got a new job in another city, it isn't always, and very rarely do we see a letter that said, I just don't like this place. Everybody has a life, things happen, but that's not always captured very well in the 4 or 5 thirds of the system. So that's not what you do. That's so yeah, so hopefully that'll give us a little bit more of that detail, and it can be answered anonymous, so. If there is something that somebody really wants to share and there's some fear for whatever reason, they can always write whatever they want, so.
So kind of speaking to the exit interview. I mean, obviously not everybody leaves because, for the reasons that you mentioned, unfortunately. And so what is the next step if there is an exit interview? And they didn't leave because.
So if there's something concerning in there, is that what you mean?
Right.
I think that with that information, you can always have a discussion. I mean, that really just opens the door to, if there's a pattern. So if you're saying at a particular school, we have 10 people leave, that's consistently saying, this system or this leadership or this whatever, definitely is worth a conversation that then we would talk about, and maybe one would have a discussion, or I'd have a discussion, or whatever fits best in that situation.
So I guess my question is there a process for that? That is followed, or is that just dependent on if and when it comes up?
Well, the process would be just evaluating it and dealing with it as it comes up, because it will be a case by case. As far as the exit interview, it's new, we're just implementing it. So I'm sure as we go through that, we might have to adjust it. And if it isn't, we're kind of looking at it, see what kind of the responses we get. We go into next year and adjust it. If we're really not getting the answers that we think we need, we go back to the question and see if we can refine it and gather that information.
Thank you.
So as I mentioned earlier, it's just difficult. So as I mentioned earlier, retention is a district as a teamwork thing. I feel like it's not something that just in my office make these things happen. I think the district as a whole works together and supports their staff. And makes it a great place to work. So I'm just going to go through some of the positive things that we have for our staff. So the district mentor program, districts do have these programs. Not a lot of districts have quite a robust program. So we do have a very good program in place. And so there's a little information about it. New teacher mentor program since 2009. Over the years, it's grown from one mentor mentoring all first and second year teachers, and one mentor covering all sped teachers. To now, one elementary mentor, one secondary, and two sped mentors. And on the right side, you can see how many staff members that they are mentoring at this point in time. Mentors try to help teachers new to the profession progress to at a faster rate than they would without a mentor. Someone you can trust to observe you, answer your questions, give you feedback, model, and share ideas and resources. They are even a shoulder to cry on if they need it. The idea with mentors is the support that is not your evaluator. That's a lot easier to go to and work with your peer and work through these things that go within going to your evaluator. Sometimes can be pretty intimidating. A little bit more about that. 9.5% leave the profession before the end of the first year. 30% leave it before the third year. 50% of teachers in the US leave the profession before the fifth year. And that's why mentors and these supports that we're talking about, I think are very important to retain our employees. Mentors serve to help reduce teacher attrition by providing all-around support to teachers. Our retention of new teachers is currently 97% for the first 2 years of teaching, so that's a good number. And then the last paragraph just talks about the different supports that they provide, weekly meetings, offer suggestions, resources, strategies. And at the beginning of the year, the new staff members are here for an extra 3 days. They kind of go through a little bit of a boot camp to get some extra support as they start with us. And this is just feedback that they received. Many new teachers have stayed there without mentoring. They have not made it as a teacher because of relationships that mentors create with new teachers. Once a mentor works with a teacher, the mentor is forever a resource for them.
And so these are experienced teachers who choose to participate in the program?
They're hired into those people. The mentors themselves, they apply to become a mentor teacher. And then we have a running list of all the new hires, and then as they come on, they connect with the appropriate mentor, they reach out to them.
So then about how many mentees should each
On that person. So right now there's 22 elementary, 10 high, 18 special education.
Right, but like, let's say I'm a mentor teacher, how many mentees would I be mentoring?
I'm not sure how they have those split specifically. I know that there are more of them involved and how that case, how each person splits, I'm not sure. Yeah, it's just a direct or based on need and specialty. They have them kind of at one level and the other level.
In regards to where it says many new teachers stated that without the mentoring, they would not have made it as a teacher. Is that based on the 9.5%, 30%, or 50%, or how is that gauged? And does that help in the retention? Is that considered in the retention?
Right, so what that's meaning is when you look at those percentages that you're talking about, without the support, it's so overwhelming, they would have been in that 50% leading within the first 5 years. So that's what that is speaking to.
And so is there a way to measure how effective this program is?
It talks about it a little bit right there as far as how many stay with the district, and that it is at 97%, where if you look at regular retention of all staff, it's just under 90% from year to year. So the new teachers, actually the retention is higher than the staff as a whole.
And so the 97% would be from since when, this year, last year?
So that was, that's our retention of new teachers, currently 97% for the first 2 years of teaching. So I'm not sure if that's including coming into this year and last year or the prior 2 years.
So yeah.
Yeah. He testified of the stats from Maryland and such.
And what is the first, why is it based off, and this is just so I can understand, why is it based off just the first 2 years? And not the 3 years or the, specifically two? Is that, in my mind, I see it that was the highest percentage, and then from there, if you could just elaborate on that.
The first 3 years are considered their probationary years. And so, and they're also just coming out of, typically speaking, not everyone, just coming out of the school, starting as a teacher. And it's a lot more overwhelming probably than anybody really thinks when they get into it. And so just having those supports really just improve longevity with them staying with the district. And I do think it's important to, when they speak to it here, is the relationship piece of it. So you come in there and you automatically have that connection with somebody that's checking in on you all the time. And part of that too is connecting you with, make sure connecting with your appropriate cohorts, departments and things like that,
So is that, maybe that 3%, because if he says, the first 2 years are probationary. So would the 3% be the people that are, don't feel like they have to, succeed or show positivity in those first 2 years?
What do you mean the 3%?
Because it was 100% first 2 years probationary. So obviously there's some people that don't want to stay the probationary period.
Right. Yeah, some do burn out the probationary period.
Can you speak to our relationship with the handful of educator prep programs across the state? I'm sure there's cohorting that happens.
Yeah, and actually I'll talk about a little bit more of that when we get to the, but thank you, that's. Right on. So, highlighting the sort of support instructional coaches that have out in the building, and this is just a description that kind of explains what they do for us. Support educators through a variety of opportunities based on what type of support they would like to receive. This may include engaging in the coaching cycle, co-teaching, co-planning, observation and feedback, or modeling instruction, to name a few. Our coaches facilitate groups of teachers with unit mapping, projection mapping, learning blocks. Instructional coaches also facilitate professional development opportunities for educators in collaboration with building and district administrators. So they really focus on being in the buildings, working with staff, and then providing, responding to their needs, providing development, staff development, or anything specific support that they need with their projection mapping and everything. They're really hands-on with things. And then
We did have a question about instructional coaches. So you mentioned that they're in the buildings.
yeah, they're housed at the district office. They deploy out to the buildings. I think their main office is actually technically called DO, but their job is to be out to build their assigned to the buildings.
They do have some questions. So how do you measure? So I think this is great information that you're sharing, but it doesn't really tell me like the effectiveness, how effective it is. And so how do you measure? How do you measure,
Instructional coaches.
right? Like how it's working, the data to support.
Mainly by feedback, and I think Chrissy can speak to that a bit more because they're under her department. But I think that both of that we can feedback from staff. As far as what they're doing, good and supporting. But
I would say, looking at our data, it seems like we're doing a phenomenal job when it comes, I see 97% retention in the first 2 years, where the national average is 30% of folks leave the profession in the first 3 years. So that data speaks to the amount of work not only that our instructional coaches are doing, but that the district is doing, and how folks working at the building level are supporting their educators in the life that leadership to happen. So the data tells me that it's work.
Yeah, instructional coaches help all, not just like 97%.
right. So they're out in the building, you have the mentors that are helping them.
Right,
First
and
year.
the previous data, that's just specific to our staff who are on probation. or not provision, but
Yeah,
like.
they're
yeah,
few
oh,
years,
yes.
yes.
So I think there's a difference there that
Shows
shows.
across then everybody, yeah.
So the mentor support in the first 2 years and the instructional coaches focus on supporting years 3 through 5. So it's just like kind of range of experiences and support the student that, the educators are getting in their first 5 years.
So I guess my question is around like what is the data and how do you track like the success of that? And is that information that we monitor?
Right, right. I don't have data on how that impacts staff. And I know we collect data as far as surveys and things like that. But as far as hard numbers and things,
Right.
I don't have that. And I'm not sure if they work on a way to measure that piece.
Yeah, at the end of each coaching cycle, as the teachers engage with, there's an opportunity to provide feedback in a survey. So there's a lot of feedback that's collected directly from educators and how successful they do without there's 6 instructional coaches that will support that. Those cycles.
So do you have like a process or procedure, like a guide of which avenues or the coaches focus on? Like, versus, like you say, 3 to 5 years, but is it, since you have such a large staff, is it certain people or is it through evaluations that you determine which ones need them more assistance from the coaches?
No, I don't do that from my office. But they're selling to the different buildings and supporting staff, and just have to reach out to them based on what we need.
Yeah, so we recognize that when you try something out new materials,
Mhm.
there's going to be a learning curve. So coaches are also supporting the implementation of new materials, the new curriculum materials, new math materials. So we're hearing about some supporting on teachers to be able to try them on and utilize them to their full capacity.
Can we speak to the building administrator as well, whether it's principal or vice principal, in helping to guide and mentor new educators aside from the mentorship program? What is the principal's role, assistant's role, any other administrator?
Well, I mean, the biggest thing is they support them on a daily basis, but they go through the whole evaluation process that we talked about last time. And that is really helpful in setting the goals, collaborating, going in and monitoring, providing supports based on what they're seeing in those evaluations and those visits, informal visits, and the formals. I mean, that's really their connection to go see what is going on a daily basis. And then providing support. And they really also focus on building those relationships and getting into classrooms just to have that connection. So the teachers are reaching out when they need support.
I'm curious to see. So if you mentioned like connection, you mentioned being in the building. So what's the difference between being like housed in the district office and then being in the building always?
Housed in the building versus housed here. I actually wasn't here when that decision was made to change that process. So I'm not sure.
So I'm just like, I guess I was just curious around like the reason for that and how is that effective?
And
And if I was saying, you're not a question.
yeah, I wasn't here at the time. But I do think when you do have folks housed in one place, it allows them to work together and be consistent. So when they're sharing information, they're working from the same place. So they do collaborate together before they go in. Yeah.
Thank you.
So this slide is another one of the supports that are out in the building. So our language program coordinators provide direct support to educators, ensure consistency of vision, goals, and language program implementation. They design professional development, support implementation of the curricular instructional materials, effective teaching and learning practices. So these are specific to our language program. another thing that we provide in our district, and Jen was a part of this, she actually gave me this information to help share what their goals are. But we are the very active wellness committee. They name themselves the Wellness Warriors, and up here you'll see some of the goals that they set for staff or for themselves. So they are promoting that 40% of staff will actively participate in one or more physical activity classes, challenges, or events. They want to get 45% of staff survey respondents will agree that their emotional well-being and mental health have improved as a result of the wellness program. And then the last one, 45% of staff will report feeling supported in their nutritional well-being as a result of the wellness program. And at the bottom, there are some activities that they promote with prizes and just competitions and fun stuff to get people out there active and working together.
So when did this Wellness Warriors start?
Started about 3 to 4 years ago. And we have a grant. We're grant funded and we're general fund funded. And so the goals as part of our grant, we have to meet these goals by the end of the school year. And then we have 1 year left in the grant, and then it'll be up to the district to decide whether they'll fully fund or if it's only partially fund, then we'll have to scale back on what we offer for staff. So we're still growing. We started at the beginning before the pandemic, and then the pandemic hit. So now we're just trying to rebuild again.
I think there are a lot of fun activities. I hear people talk a lot about the Zumba classes. And of course, the biggest rules and challenges and those sorts of things. So it's a fun thing. It's like camaraderie. So go down to other retention items. So salary and benefits, just want to talk through a little bit where we are as a district and what we offer. We offer competitive salary. We do pick up the 6% PERS pickup that you'll hear a lot about. And that's on top of the employer portion, which is an average of about 26%. We offer longevity pay. And that's important because we do have a lot of staff at the top of the piece, license schedule, other topped out. Insurance benefit, the current cap is $1,575 per month or $18,900 per year. But with that being said, both of the license and the classified group are part of an insurance pool. So even though there's a cap, there's enough remaining in the pool because there's one party or two party votes that out of pocket expenses for sick families or somebody going over the cap. And that's been that way for terms since 2012. We're going on somebody's memory of when they started here, so at least 2012. Other things that are in the contract that are great incentives for our employees. A special education differential, so anybody that is in our special education department, we have one person receives a 10% differential on top of their salary. And the SOL differential is additional 3%. And along with that, if we hire a teacher that does not have that endorsement, because it's important to the district that they have those skills, we do pay for a teacher to go through that with a partnership with the college. And so we pay for that, and then once we pay for their class and they earn that, then they get 3% differential on top of the salary. And then oral language differential 3%, and then full language at 6%. So that's where we really support our bilingual staff. There's a process. The process is actually the testing actually is being implemented. We don't administer and have those tests given to staff, and we get the information of the differential to the salaries. And just as a snapshot at the bottom there, I just highlighted a few of the salaries on the schedule where the bulk of our employees sit. So, we have a lot, like I said, that are at the maximum of their columns. And so as you can see that MH 20, 40, 60, we have a lot of employees in those areas, but that's just kind of a general snapshot of a few of things on the salary.
Does it play into the resignations with the exit interviews? I know that's just implemented, but have you seen this to be a major factor in some of the resignations, or is it just one of every other few?
No, honestly, I have never seen a mention of compensation. Now, whether that's something that somebody would have put on a piece of paper versus what we say outside, I don't know that. But I haven't seen that. And I did break down the hourly just to give just to show, break it down to the numbers. It's hard to tell them to say the annual salary. What does that really look like compared to somebody outside of the school district? And then as well, the 260-day contract. And I just put that comparison there because when you're comparing it to somebody outside of schools that were 12 months throughout the year or 260 contract days. I just was trying to compare apples to apples so you can see how that would equate. Just as a point of reference.
The +1, 8, 12, and 16, is that the step? Is that the
So 16 is years of experience, so it's going down the home. And a lot of them at 16 is well beyond that because that's where they're maxed out, but.
And then, are educators required to obtain CTE credits? I'm just thinking of like my own profession. Is that
Not,
something?
no, they're not required to get CTE credits unless they're in that, or unless they're teaching in that area.
So an example of that would be.
Like in the one of the high school, what programs are that for?
Like the career programs, is that what you're?
Yeah, career technical.
You mean, are you
programs,
saying
yeah.
PDUs?
Oh, sorry, yeah,
Yeah.
when you said like my profession, yeah,
Okay. Yeah, the CT is some different, okay.
in my profession, that's.
So what's your question about PDs?
Yeah, so are teachers required for like license renewal, to obtain so many credits every year, or what is that like?
They're required to keep track of that themselves. It doesn't, we don't keep track of any of that. They submit that directly to TSPC. And it's my understanding that they don't ask for quite as much of that information as they used to, or used to have all those logs. But our advice is to keep track of all that.
So that's part of their license.
That's part of the license process, not an in-house thing.
Thank you.
In terms of the differential, if we have an educator who's fluent in both Spanish and Russian, do they receive an additional compensation bump?
It's capped at 9%.
Okay.
So between those pieces, between the language differential and as well as. So this graph, I just tried to pull some districts around us to just kind of show comparison of where our salary schedule falls as compared to Canby, Southern Badger, and Silver Falls. It's pretty straightforward. I mean, it was like all across the board that we had all those districts. We're pretty close, Canby in one area. And then the schedules that I pulled did not, they didn't go up to MA plus 60, where we had an additional column where we top out like MA plus 40 again. So that's why I'm Woodford has an additional green line up there with every district's schedule. So it's just a visual of how we compare to other districts.
But is the pay the same? So like if the other school district goes up to 40 plus 16, is it similar to our 60 plus 16?
I just followed it. So if they said MA 40 plus 16, then I just left them in the same columns, but in theory, That's their next policy, you could compare that to our nursing home as well.
So I guess that was my question.
Mhm,
Is
yeah.
our rights called here?
Mhm,
I
yes.
guess the districts.
From the ones I looked at. And just a couple of positive things that our district provides. So teaching and learning opportunities. So through that, our staff has the ability to do committee work on task force and advisory boards to just contribute and continue to be a part of the development of the district. They facilitate professional development. We have many facilitators at our conference, we just did in the last week. And then other various ones throughout the year. And just some examples there, Monday staff meetings, learning other opportunities for them are going to conferences, our in-district conference, and they oftentimes can go to regional and national conferences. We do, and going back to the question earlier, for kind of forms to grow your own. We do work with Western Oregon University with an endorsement program to bring folks through our special education program. So we have several folks in that right now. Might come to us and be working as a VA. And we see that they're very strong and ask if they want to start working through this program. And then we provide tuition reimbursement, 6 quarter hours per year. They can accumulate that up to 18 credits. So reimburse those. But as I talked about earlier, if an employee comes to us and does not have the ESOL endorsement, we have a program, we pay for that program as well for them to obtain that. We also have opportunities for dual language specialization, where we support that program, continuing learning. That includes monthly PLCs with district staff to support that. And just recently we started the Oregon Teaching Apprenticeship Program. We're involved with a pilot program. We have 2 folks this year that will begin that. It's in partnership with TSPC and BOLI. And we were selected, the Hillsborough School District were selected as a specifically is to support bilingual staff members. And we get into the teaching profession. So we have 2 folks that will be going to that board that we're on to be approved into the program on Monday. And then next year, we're starting with elementary, and then that's intended to grow to bring on the staff members at the secondary level to focus on wherever those needs are and bring them through that program. So it's like on the job training. So it's to help. So you're not just going to college for 5 years. There's some college in the beginning, and we're getting you in the building. And it's like a true apprenticeship. That's something new that we're just starting.
That started this year.
Yeah, we're in the process. We have to build. We had to build the board and all the processes behind it. And you have the TSPC and BOLI. Several colleges, Tribeca, Pacific. There's a handful of colleges involved with that. Yeah, so it'll be really interesting, and I think it's going to be supported, continue to be supported through BOLI and PSPC as well. And we need to bring some more people into the pipeline, and that's just another method to do that.
And we pay, the school district pays.
Right now, this is being covered under a grant. And the first couple of folks that we're looking at, it appears that it'll be about $60,000 through the grant will help support pay tuition, all those sorts of things. So it's pretty significant. That's over 2 or 3 years, depending on where they start. Everybody may start, some may not have any college, some may have a year, some may have an associate. So they go through a process to be evaluated to figure out where they start off from to then get them to if they're teaching license.
So this amount covers about how many educators?
For that just that is per
per hour.
And so that's a part of this massive, grant. So really, the growth of that will depend on continuation of the various grants, and then at some point, how much the district chooses and is able to supplement into that.
I guess that was my question, the district is. Like a part of a budget is going into that,
Not that at this time.
not okay, but in the
That's all
future.
grant based. Yeah, it just depends going into the budget. Those grants continue, if they're successful. You never know if KSBC will continue to support, or the legislature will continue to support. Or where those buckets, we'll just keep looking for the buckets and see what we can do.
So as far as these grants are, do we have an idea of like how long they'll be available for?
This
Or is it
one
years
particular
right here?
one, this first one, I think, is like a year pilot, but there's other buckets associated with it, so. There's the one massive one, and then there's some smaller ones that also help offset some of those costs, so. That was kind of that was all I have for this evening. Do you have any more questions? Or if there's anything you want me to bring back in the future, then feel free to share with the superintendent, and we'll put that together.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next agenda item. All right, I'm sure.
Everyone down, Dr. Bishop.
You want me to come back? No, I'm not as excited as HR. That's okay. So in front of you have your typical monthly report. October isn't a terribly exciting month. School has started. We've already got our first paychecks out. We're not getting a ton of revenue. And something I will call your attention to, and then I hope you guys remember this for next month, is if you look at revenue and you look at the local revenue line, you can see what we've received year to date is quite small. Well, next month, after we've received all our November revenue, property tax will cut in, and that number will almost be at 100% for the year. So just something to bring your attention to. When you see a significant jump next month, that's typical because people pay their property taxes. So don't be surprised. Otherwise, the budget is looking where it should be this year. We, in comparison to prior year, in the instruction functions, the 1,000 functions were a little underspent from where we were last year, which is great. And same with in support services, we're 1% spent under this time last year.
So for the state, is that where the cat tax comes in?
So no, so we don't receive directly the corporate activity tax from the state. The state proportions out the corporate activity tax in separate pieces. So for example, the corporate activity tax funds the student investment account grant, which is received in our special revenue fund. It funds the high school success grant, which is also in the special revenue fund, and then other smaller grants that they give out as well. So the main sources of revenue in the general fund are property taxes and the state school fund. Those are the two biggest sources. And a little fact, I thought that might be relevant since Nikki was up here sharing about staffing. Over 75% of our general fund budget goes directly to staffing costs. The other biggest chunk is what we call other purchase services, which is mainly transportation, so school buses, utilities, and things like our liability insurance and property insurance. And that makes up about 11% of our general fund budget.
Can you speak to the jump in intermediate revenues?
Intermediate revenue, absolutely. So the ESD passes through our portion of the state school fund to us, and they do that in chunks throughout the year. So you'll see it sit probably at that amount until March again.
You guys will also see our enrollment report. We're just a little shy of where we were last year at this time, which is fantastic. You were asking about ADMR versus ADMW. Right now, we're at about 7,083 ADMW in comparison to our 5,210 ADMR.
So this is R.
This is R, and will always be R. It's not very straightforward to calculate W because we need several time period measurements for it to be somewhat accurate.
Thank you.
And just for clarification's sake, ADMR is physical warm bodies within the district. ADMW takes into account our special populations of students. So our ESL students, our students on IEPs, pregnant parenting, students in foster situations, things like that. Question?
So it looks like we have our increase we're really seeing district wide is happening at the K-5 level.
Yes and no. Again, if you compare it back to like 21, 22, for example, that number is still not where it was at previously. So in comparison to this time last year, yes, that is the biggest component. But in comparison to history, we're still down in that area.
We see, so in the last year, that increase that we see it primarily at one elementary, is it Heritage because of new construction or Nelly in that area?
No, it's not primarily at one elementary, it's really spread across all of them. Nelly, you might recall, has the additional classrooms built on. So a classroom has been added each year at Nelly, a new kindergarten classroom, so that will trickle through. So yes, there has been growth at Nelly, but that's attributed to planning out the growth of that building.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go back a little bit to the financial report, and I'm just kind of thinking of like the future and thinking about budget cuts and things like that. So what you put together here, is this, does the software come up with this? You can put this information there?
On this one, I put this into an Excel sheet from the software. It's direct information from our software. The report that comes from the accounting software is not super readable. It's not a very user-friendly format, so I dump it into Excel to make it a little easier to read, but it's directly from our accounting system. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
And our fourth item under reports is Arthur Academy. Presenting today's principal Lucia Soria.
Hi, it's nice to see some familiar faces and some new faces over there. As she said, I'm Lucia Soria, I'm the principal over at Arthur Academy. I'm really excited to share my annual report with you. All right. Who we are, our mission statement is that every single student, regardless of ethnicity, parental income, learning difference, culture. Sorry. Will become a fluent reader and will master the academic and intellectual skills necessary to complete the next level of schooling. Our motto is pretty simple: pay attention, work hard, get smart, be proud. Our kids love to shout this at us. Our core values are our school community is a place where students, staff, and families are valued and respected. We work together to provide a safe, welcoming environment in which all students thrive and love to learn.
For teaching last year, we had 6 classroom teachers. We had 1 intervention specialist that works with any students who aren't at mastery. And so she can push into classrooms or she can pull out of classrooms, and this really helps us keep all of our students at mastery. We have 4 small groups teachers who kind of did that, but with more steady groups. So the intervention specialist sees a problem in the moment, goes in, grabs those kids for a week, maybe 2 weeks, solves the problem, gets them up to mastery, puts them back in the classroom. Or if he pushes into the classroom, helps them right there. The small groups teachers, if we have students who are either above level or below level, we'll put a group together, and that specialist teacher will usually keep that group, graduate a couple out here and there, but usually keep that group for the year. And of course, all our staff is highly qualified and licensed. For our support staff, we have 2 resource coordinators. You would consider those like your classified folks that help out with lunches and recesses and all that good stuff. Administration in the school building, you have me and an office coordinator. And at central office, we have an executive director, we have a business director, and we had a bookkeeper last year. For our enrollment, we had 145 students in the fall. We lost a couple, and ended up with about 100, well, ended up with 148 students. And there you can kind of look at the demographics. It's pretty small there. But 18% was white, and I can't see that on the June, that's definitely 78% was our high population. And we are very, we have the same populations as you do in our neighborhood schools here. So we're working with the same kiddos. The wait list before September of 2023, that should be 2022, excuse me. We had 32 on our wait list who are still waiting in order to get into Arthur Academy when we started the school year. So we had filled up our classes. Go ahead.
So what's the size of the classroom?
We have normal class sizes, about 30 students per class is what's in our charter with the district. So kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade, we usually end up with 30 students. And then by about 4th grade, maybe we've lost a couple on the way. And because of the way our curriculum works, we really start them in kindergarten at a direct instruction curriculum that we're using, and it's very step by step. So if we have 4th graders coming in from a non-Arthur Academy, what tends to happen is they end up lots of times being placed in 1st and 2nd grade reading and 1st and 2nd grade math. And so that's something that we kind of keep in mind. So we might add a couple here and there throughout the school year, early on in the school year, but by March and April, probably not as much, because it's just those gaps are so big and we're not at the beginning of any of our programs at that point. Good question. And of course, we do take the Oregon State assessment to students in grades 3 through 5. And this is based on the scale score, not on the percent passing, of course. You can kind of take a look at the difference between Woodburn School District and Arthur Academy there. And this one is for mathematics. No questions? I'll go ahead and move on to the next slide. And here's language arts, again, based off the scale score. And science, which is only 5th grade. Only 5th graders take that as a science test. And we do easy CPM instead of math testing at Arthur Academy. Oh, and we do that in the fall and spring. This shows the number of the percentage of students in the 40th through 99th percentile that are passing for easy CPM rating.
So CBM is an assessment that you.
Yes, it's like the map. It's a nationally based program, just like the map is. Lots of schools use easy CPM instead of math testing. And all 6 Arthur Academy schools do. But yes, it's based on national percentiles, just like math testing is. And again, here's math for kindergarten through 5th grade. And these are our spring percentages, not our fall percentages. And we don't do a science test in AZCPM.
But you test in fall and in spring.
We test in fall and in spring.
So you see better scores in the spring then.
Oh, lots of times, yes. Rosie, do you think you caught me at something? We're only required to show the spring scores. That's sort of me burrowing a report. And now we're getting into our ELL students. So this is our number of ELL students at each level. We had a total of about 146 students enrolled. And we had 33 of those were ELL students, which means we were at 23%. And we had 3 in special education programs. We did not have any who were exited but monitored at the time. And you can take a look at the placement data from June 22, 23 there for the number of ELL students for kindergarten through 5th grade. And here's the breakdown by grade level for beginners and the intermediate, really advanced and monitoring. Moving into technology now, we do have 158 Chromebooks for student use, which means we have a couple of extras right now, but every student has access to a Chromebook. This was our 2023 parent survey, and you can see that highly and or satisfied took up 97%. Barely satisfied was 13%, and not satisfied was 0% was the last year.
Is there specifics in regards to like the unsatisfaction, the satisfaction or
For the
whatnot?
barely satisfied,
Yeah,
they made comments, both students returned this year. It was one parent of 2 students. And we just kind of talked it out and resolved it, and they came back this year, one's a 5th grader and one's a 2nd grader.
So if they weren't satisfied, they wouldn't have returned.
So I have a question or two, but it's about the testing scores. So I can remember this down and see if I can remember it. So the CBM, it shows that 75 to 80% are reading at grade level.
Can you go back to that second, please? To make sure we get the same thing.
But then only 23.9 passed the state exam.
Oh, you're comparing Easy CBM to OSA?
Yes.
Yes, Easy CBM gives some indication for OSA, but it is not aligned to OSA. They are 2 very different tests, just like map testing and
Right.
OSA.
And so that's my similar question to the math. Because I saw from here that 60 to 70%. But then for the state, it's 11.9%. So I guess my question is, what percent of your students pass the state test in reading and
I would have to get back to you on that one. I don't have that data right
that
here.
seems
but-
like it would be important to share when you're providing some of these numbers.
Yeah, we tend to share the scale score. That's
Right.
for sure.
So it would be
Yes.
interesting to know if you can share that information, like
Sure.
the percentage of your students who are passing at the
Absolutely.
state level. Or based on your graphs, like what do you consider a passing score
For Easy CBM or for OSA?
or I guess your assessment?
That's not indicated by us. That is Easy CBM. It's a nationwide test, just like the map. They do the criteria for that. We don't consider what's passing.
Right, so I guess my question is, like, how do you prepare students to pass the state exam? If these are so different.
They are a little bit different, but they have a lot of the same criteria in the questions. And so again, Easy CBM, if you have, I can send you some information on Easy CBM, but because it's a nationally scored test, it gives the percent. That green percent is what they consider should be passing on OSA.
Right, so I guess I'm just a little confused. It seems like if that's the case, then why aren't these percentages aligned or
Yeah.
close to?
And I know that you would find the same thing on map testing, is that it's not as aligned as what we would like. Because OSA is just, it's a beast unto itself. It really is. The way they word questions is just different. And the way they present information to students is just different than these other nationwide tests that are out there.
I guess I just have more questions, but I don't think they're for you. I do appreciate you sharing that, but I would like that information on, what is that percentage of your
Absolutely.
students
Zoom in and get that to you.
who are passing this?
Yeah, absolutely.
And the rest of the parent survey was about parents who want their child to return, it was 93%. And if your child did not attend Arthur Academy, where would you most likely send them to school? Homeschool, neighborhood school, private school, another charter school. Wrapped up in that 7% were fifth graders who couldn't return to our school, by the way, because they had graduated. So that took up a couple of percentage points there.
And once they, your school, so for instance, they'll go to the sixth graders, they'll go to like French Berry or.
A lot of them do. Last year, it was about 62%, I believe, that ended up in Woodburn School District. Some of them ended up in Arion, some in Salem. And there's a picture of some really cute kids. With our mascot that we just got last year, the Panther.
I do have another question. What kind of resources do you provide for students, if you have students who might be on an IEP plan or need additional help?
That's a good question. Our SPED team is your SPED team. We have the same amazing people working with our kiddos as that works with your kiddos, and we have a great team. So we're really happy with that.
Yeah.
So the ELL, do they get, like, do you get an additional grant to assist those students?
We actually have an ESOL licensed teacher who pushes in to help those students. And because we are a smaller venue than your big schools, we don't have as many hotspots as what you might have. And if they start in kindergarten with us, we build the same background knowledge. And this program is amazing for it. It really is. The comprehension of course comes after the decoding for reading, but math they catch right on right away. And so we really have a great curriculum. It just works for this group of kids that we have. Any other questions? All right, I'll get you those numbers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, moving on to confirmation items. As you see here, confirmation items presented as follows: meeting minutes of October 10th. Item 2, personnel report. 3, acceptance of gifts and donations. 4, surplus property disposals. 5, funding proposals and applications. Do we have any questions? So I have noticed in the past and last year, many of our school psychologists resigned. And I'm just curious if, and with seeing special ed teachers resign as well, and I'm sure that we may or may not know the reason to us why that's happening, but I'm just wondering about how thinking that we're picking on it. Maybe just keeping an eye out as to the why.
Yeah, I think we heard a little bit earlier from Director Tucker, there's the multiple reasons for why, so we're trying to create a system that helps us gather more information and data to really understand what are some trends. There's a lot of things that contribute to it. And so really just us having data is all going to support us to get better recommendations.
Any other questions? If not, I would entertain a motion to adopt the confirmation items. All in favor of adopting a confirmation item as presented, please say aye. Aye. Motion carried with a 5-0 votes. Moving on to board action items. Whole business, we have policy updates.
So today, your board packet, your system, policies look familiar, the board sent out the tweets to review these 7% back in October. And so tonight, you'll see the language being presented there for, and with recommendation being adoption of approval tonight. Wanted to base on a couple of things, just point some highlights out for you, kind of make the bonus of being here in a couple batches. The first batch has to do with board meetings and executive sessions, so policy DB, EDA and DB. Policy BD and BDA and BDC. So to point out on the board meetings one, there's the requirement that's been added for training on public meeting law. And then a provision there that it's a grievance complaint possible as well. So I know the board is engaged in lots of training throughout the year through OSB, including the board retreat. And so that will be provided during those meeting times. That's a requirement now. And the policies are policy updates come from updates and changes to law. So it's sort of the response to be able to stay in compliance. You'll see in policy DBC, the executive sessions, and 2 provisions to be able to provide the why to go into executive session. And those are number 9 and number 10. There to be able to provide consider matters related to safety of the governing body, public body safety, staff, volunteers, and security of public body facilities and meeting spaces, and then to also consider matters related to cybersecurity infrastructure. Something just to point out for the retirement of staff policy. Are there any questions about the retirement of staff policy? It is something that's in place and practice already, just provided an expansion of this provision through the year of 2035 to allow current retired staff to continue to work.
And then in that case, to sort of like technicality, in that case, we no longer pay the PERS pickup for those employees, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, they're retired from PERS. But there's a provision that allows them to continue to have employment. This our policy is through the end of the year. So exactly where to retire in December, be able to work back through the end of the year. And this final batch has to do with public charter schools, LBE and LBEA, and worth noting here is with the denial. It requires us to twice a year calculate the percentage of students that we have attending virtual public charter school. The cap is still 3%. We are currently at about 0.5 percentage point, so we're significantly below the cap. It does provide some language there for a denial in the process that would be followed for an individual to be able to appeal that denial. But we're nowhere near approaching that cap. So the recommendation for the board is to adopt these sectors.
Are there any questions regarding the policy update?
So just a quick question. This LBEA, that also includes like homeschool, because it's not considered charter. Right,
The homeschool
that's separate.
falls outside of
Yeah.
of charters or charters. Homeschool students register with DSD and provide data on how many students we have in the homeschool.
But we still keep a data of that
Yeah, we get
in our district, the residents.
We could provide that total number of students who are currently registered in the school.
There are no other questions. See you like to make a motion.
And will be approved the policy updated as presented.
Second it.
Thank you. All in favor of adopting the policy update as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
The motion carries. The next item on our agenda is board action on executive session. So I will now entertain a motion related to the policy grievance reviewed in executive session. So is there a motion?
I move to hear the policy grievance.
I also have that.
I second it.
Move to oppose to hear the policy grievance.
Sorry, now you have a motion on the floor with a second, so you have to take a roll for the, vote for that
Okay,
before you can
sorry.
entertain another motion. You wanna call the vote?
So I move to vote, place a vote,
No, you
regress the motion.
have a motion to hear the policy grievance, and then you have a second. And then you can call for a vote. All in favor?
Oh. All in favor?
Alright,
Aye.
Aye. Or. What was the vote?
The motion on the floor is to hear the policy grievance.
Oh,
Anthony's aye. And Laura? Rosie, what's your vote?
Nay.
And Mommy?
Abstain.
So the motion does not carry.
the motion does not carry.
Right, so next on the agenda, we have. Under board action items, item number 2, new business. So the first item is math material adoption.
By Director Chapman and Director Pete were accompanied by some educators who have worked on the process and are bringing forward a recommendation tonight on math material adoption.
All right, good evening, Chair Legaspi, Superintendent Larios, and board members. I would like to introduce a few people that are joining us tonight. This is Malika Gillette. She is an instructional coach focused on math for our K-12 classrooms. And then Nicole Beat, our Assistant Director of Teaching and Learning. And then online, we have Teresa Bruce. She is one of our middle school math teachers. And they were all a part of our math adoption committee. If you recall, earlier this year, we came to you with a proposal to postpone our adoption for math materials because we were not able to complete the process this past year. Our committee wanted some additional time to pilot materials and to make sure that they could really come to an agreement on materials that they would like to adopt. And I'm happy to let you know that committee has come to an agreement and has materials that they would like to propose for adoption. So can you go to the next slide?
Yes.
Oh,
It should work. Sorry.
So we just wanted to start by sharing this slide, the importance of high quality instructional materials. This is one of the most important things that we do in our department. Every year we adopt instructional materials for a different content area, and every content is on a 7-year rotation. And so I'll just read this quote, that a growing and compelling research base suggests that high quality instructional materials can yield improvements in student learning outcomes equal to or greater than many interventions that are often more costly. Which is high quality instructional materials are about bringing equity to the district, a shared experience, creating a floor but not a ceiling around the teaching and learning that happens in our classrooms. So when we think about instructional materials, we're talking about basal materials. So we'll talk a little bit about the difference between basal versus supplemental materials. But basal materials are those that are adopted by the State Board of Education, and then districts are required to adopt those as well. And we can choose from the same list that the State Board has adopted, or we can do independent adoptions. In this case, we've chosen something that is from the state list as well as independent adoption materials. So got a little bit of both to share tonight. So the difference between basal and supplemental, basal materials are intended to be substantial and ongoing. We're required to adopt these, like I said, for some identified content areas. And this is really the kind of the base for what teachers use for their instructional materials. It's something that's consistent across the district. We provide support for teachers when we adopt new materials. That's through professional development. We have the vendors come in and provide that support. We have coaches that support it. So we support that in a variety of ways, but the basal materials are basically used for core instruction. And so it's the foundation of what we do. And then supplemental materials are those that teachers identify as additional things that they want to bring in to supplement those basal materials. Because there is no basal product that has everything that a teacher would need. And so teachers are also able to supplement with some different things that they might find, such as audio clips or films, intervention materials. For like language arts, they might supplement with some novels. So tonight we're talking about basal materials. That's what we'll be sharing with you for the recommendation for adoption.
So I am excited to be here tonight because I've been a part of this work for the last roughly year and a half. Last year, as one of the teachers who piloted materials that we were considering, I got to pilot 2 different instructional materials and then bring the experience of that pilot to our materials adoption team. What you see here is the timeline of what we have gone through and then what we'll continue to go through moving forward. So we started with a visioning process, which Nicole will talk about a little bit later in the presentation, but we were trying to envision our beliefs about mathematics as well as our beliefs about our students as mathematicians, right? Like what do we believe our students can do, which is really everything. And so from there, we prioritized what criteria was important to us in high quality instructional materials and narrowed it down to top choices. And then we took those top choices into the classrooms to get student perspectives. And then, pardon me, this fall, we took them to community events, open houses, and conferences to get community perspective, which Nicole will also talk about. And then we were able to actually make the decision, which is where we are now in winter 2023. And so as we move forward, pending board approval, we'll be able to give our teachers effective training on implementing these high quality instructional materials, and then begin using the instructional materials starting in the fall of 2024, and then we'll be able to really reflect on that and get better and better at using them over the course of the next 7 years. So, as I mentioned, we started with a visioning process. We wanted to share with you our belief statements about our students as mathematicians. I'm going to focus on the one on the left because that's really the synthesis of everything we came up with. Our students are capable, resourceful, creative problem solvers who bring real life into their math experiences and are part of a whole, in part full fractions, mathematical community of mathematicians. They can communicate and want to give meaningful feedback to each other and know the why, the purpose in multiple languages. And as a side note, one of the things that the Math Task Force is doing is putting together a resource document for teachers of trilingual mathematics vocabulary. So English, Spanish, and Russian mathematics vocabulary for K, it's K5, almost K8 now, that the task force has been working on. So one thing that we wanted to share that relates really deeply to this mathematics instructional materials adoption process is the changes that are happening in mathematics education at a state level and how that's affecting us at a local level. So at a state level, they've changed the requirements for high school mathematics. So instead of a traditional 1 credit of algebra, 1 credit of geometry, 1 credit of algebra 2 sequence being required by the state, they have changed that to what's called a core 2 plus 1. So the core 2 is the section that you see there in pink. The 1 credit of algebra remains the same. The second credit is split into a 0.5 credit of geometry and a 0.5 credit of data reasoning. So data reasoning is statistics and probability and interpreting data, all of those kinds of things that really come up in real world authentic mathematics. And then the part that I'm most excited about is this opening up of math pathways for the 3rd credit of mathematics. So now instead of all of our students being filtered into algebra 2 and some of them not being successful in algebra 2, either because it doesn't relate to them or because it's not applicable for the fields that they're interested in, or because of any number of reasons why a student might not be successful in algebra 2, they now have different options. So you can see there in blue, a student could still choose to take algebra 2 if they're interested in the STEM field, if they're interested in calculus, that might be something they choose to do. But they may also choose to take statistics as their 3rd credit of required mathematics. Or they could take survey of computer science, which has math standards in the class and is still a math credit for their 3rd credit of mathematics. Next year, we're planning to add an offering of financial algebra tied into our business CTE career technical education pathway. And so they could choose to take financial algebra instead of algebra 2 to get more of the application side if they're interested in opening their own business, for example. And so depending on what they choose, they can continue to take math within that math pathway, and all of the green boxes represent college credit opportunities for students.
So that was my question.
Yeah.
So the blue, the quantitative pathway options, are those transferable to community college or a four-year university?
So all 4-year universities, because this was work led by the state, the Oregon Department of Education, specifically the math folks at the Oregon Department of Education, coordinated with the Oregon Higher Education Coordinating Commission to make sure that all public universities in Oregon, they can't control what the private universities do, but all of the public universities in Oregon have actually changed their requirements as of this fall 2023, to no longer state Algebra 2 as a requirement. So if a student took financial algebra, that would still get them accepted to four-year public university. The green boxes that are the college credit opportunities would also be accepted by public universities in Oregon.
Right, but private colleges or universities that offer more financial aid to likely our students. Like that, it's not, like, our students would have difficulty applying to those universities if they were not in a green path.
I think that it's been an ongoing issue literally since I was a student in high school, that private universities sometimes don't take credits that the high school told us they would. But I also know that if a student is interested in a private university, or for example, the Act 6 scholarship, that the high school math team is kind of aware of the options as well as the limitations of the math pathways, and is going to work with the counselors and with transparent communication with the students to make sure that they are selecting classes that work best for them.
Right, I guess I'm just thinking of maybe our freshmen and sophomores who maybe start out in this blue path and want to go to Willamette. Are we aware of what Willamette will accept based on these math requirements?
I would say that the college and career counselors at the high school and the high school counselors work with students to make sure that they're looking at the requirements for the universities that they're interested in or the colleges that they're interested in, so that they can make sure that they're following pathways that will, you know, allow them to enter into those colleges, because it would be challenging for us to know the requirements of every single college and university that kids might go to. And so the counselors work with students to make sure that they're looking at the requirements for colleges that they want to, that they're interested in attending, to make sure that they're taking courses that will meet the requirements of those colleges.
Additionally, one of the things that is not illustrated in this diagram is the ability of students to bridge between pathways. So for example, if a student took statistics as a junior, but then was looking at a private university, they could still take Algebra 2 as a senior and be fully prepared to take Math 111 and 112 at any college or university. So we tried to keep in mind that students will need different pathways and options, and they can bridge between those pathways. So the recommendations made by the Math Instructional Materials Adoption Committee differ by courses. So the elementary group, K-5, selected the McGraw-Hill Reveal program, which one of the interesting things about that program is it has lessons that include an inquiry component. So having our students discover math, not just have it handed to them, which I think is something that stood out about that program to our piloting teachers. The 6 math, middle school math, as well as algebra, geometry, and algebra 2 will be using the Sawdust Envision program. One of the interesting things about that program is it includes projects of authentic mathematics, as well as research-backed 3-act math tasks. And a notable thing about the recommendations of those groups are that the middle school team and the high school team wanted one program across both levels. In our previous adoption cycle, the middle school team and the high school team were using different instructional programs, which put a strain on students when transitioning from the 8th to 9th year. And so we're hoping to kind of remove that unintentional barrier by having one cohesive program. Then, as you saw in the previous slide, we have these new math pathways as well as a brand new class as part of that core 2 requirement. So because data reasoning is relatively new and because Oregon is on the forefront of this mathematics work, we're one of 25 states that are part of the Launch Years program. There were no data reasoning curriculums that were reviewed by the state. And so we did an independent review of 3 different data reasoning curriculums. And ultimately we found that this Bootstrap World data science curriculum met the standards as well as met our needs the best. One of the notable things about that curriculum is that it has a student-friendly computer programming component. So every single student, as they take this data reasoning course, will also get a tiny bit of practice with computer programming, which I think is a really, really great skill for kids to have.
Is that the Python language? I remember reading somewhere about learning Python.
Python is in our survey of computer science class. Data reasoning uses it's like baby Python, it's called Pirate. The biggest difference between Pirate and Python is that Pirate has student-friendly error messages, whereas Python has more technical error messages.
That's why.
Yeah, exactly. Probability and statistics also did not have texts reviewed by the state, but our teacher at the high school who's currently teaching probability and statistics has been using this textbook and finds it really effective and useful for our students, and has got a great digital companion that allows students to work at home and gives them access to videos if they're absent. So that's why we chose that independent or non-state reviewed material. As remember Medina just mentioned, the survey of computer science uses a Python instructional material from Code High School. Code High School is a fully digital basal curriculum material, but in my personal opinion, it makes sense for a computer science class to have a digital curriculum because it's all on the computer. And then lastly, the financial algebra class that we're planning to start next year will use the Next Generation Personal Finance curriculum. One of the benefits of that curriculum is actually already being used right now in at least 2 other Oregon school districts. And that Next Generation Personal Finance curriculum is completely free. Because they care more about students having a comprehensive financial education. Teresa Bruce was one of the middle school teachers who piloted our the top 2 curriculum choices, and so she's going to talk a little bit about that experience and how we collected this data.
So this data is collected from our piloting when we were working on our pilot. So as you can see, for the elementary school, there were 32 teachers piloted on one topic in the spring. 11 teachers participated in the extended pilot in the fall. Therefore, about over 800 students participated in the pilot. As for our middle school, 2 teachers piloted in the spring, 4 teachers participated in the extended pilot in the fall, and overall we have about 630 students participated in the pilot. As for high school, secondary, 4 teachers at 2 levels piloted in the spring, with over 370 students participating in the pilot. So the pilots of the instructional materials aided in decision making between top curricular choices and give invaluable insights for full implementation. So like Malika was saying, I have the opportunity to pilot during the spring. And then I decided to do it again, extended the pilot this year. And one thing nice about this is we were able to pilot both in English and Spanish. So I work with my my partner at Valor to pilot this this year as well, and as well as some teachers at French Prairie, which is really awesome. Some of the things that I really liked about Salva's Envision is that they actually give us not only digital books, they also give us like slides where I can collaborate with other teachers as we continue using this curriculum. And I want to focus a little bit on why is it so much better than the other thing, what we call other books or other curriculum that we were materials, I guess. Looking at is because this curriculum actually, these materials actually give our kids a chance to talk to each other. And like Malika was saying, there are a lot of activities, and one of my favorite is called the I wrote it here somewhere. Solve and discuss it activity, where it's always before the main content, before we teach. That allows me to see what the kids already know, see what their prior knowledge are. And I, just by using it a few times, these few what we call units, I was able to understand what the kids already know. And this also allowed the kids that are students, I call them kids because they are all my kids, students be able to actually, even for the ones that don't usually participate in class, give them a chance to think and able to show you the work that they already know. And then when they work in small groups, they're able to share what their understandings are. So those are some of the things that I got to experience and see through this program. And in addition, this also gives students student agency where they can be responsible for their own learning. And there are a lot of examples. If a student is absent, they are able to still catch up, because there are a lot of examples in the book, as well as materials online that they are able to access. So, yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's a late night. We appreciate you. She said she's working on a lesson plan though, so it wasn't a waste of time.
So I have a question. When Carissa mentioned online extra, is that included in the curriculum, or is that something that the parents or the student has to buy separately?
Oh, no, we never make parents or kids buy things. It's usually rolled up into the bundle, but part of, forgive me, in a later slide, Rosie, is the bundle pricing, and we'll work all that stuff out with the contractors, the publishers. Yeah. But yes, it will all be included. Kids wouldn't have to pay for that. Okay, so thank you, Carissa. We're moving to slide 10. So one thing that Malika mentioned earlier is we've been really trying to get a lot more community engagement out from our department directly. So you may have seen us. We were at this is our road show. It's very exciting. These flyers right here show some of the cornerstones of math that Malika was talking about, and give like a brief description of the adoption process. And then the QR codes are so that families can give feedback on the materials. So behind those flyers, you can see some of the books that are there at the middle school level. So we were at the middle school open houses, and then we hit up all of the conferences. So we had these materials, the flyers that even the QR code, and also the Math Pathways flyer that Malika walked you all through earlier. I will say at the elementary level, I feel like parents are probably like, why are you showing me the high school math classes? But we really wanted to contextualize the full like K-12 math vision for people, so they saw what students were working back towards. So that was something that was present at all the schools. So that was something new for us and exciting. And then So given that we've, been doing this work for over almost a year and a half, like Malika said, the project is finally hopefully coming to a close. And our next steps are to finalize those contracts with our publishers and kind of work out what are all the different pieces that are gonna go into our actual purchase. And then spend the rest of the year working with teams of teachers to match up their maps, to do some unit mapping together, to do training with them, and really take some time to implement in ways that we haven't always got to be able to do the way the adoption cycles kind of built out. So it was really nice that we had this extra thing to do that. So thanks for the postponement earlier this year. And then some of the teachers who've been piloting, like Carissa, she has the books right now in her classroom. So we're not gonna be like, stop using those for 6 more months and then start again in the fall. So some teachers will continue using them. They'll be early adopters, which means that other teachers can go visit them and see how it goes in their classroom, and then everybody will implement next fall. It's kind of timeline. Oh, and then finally, we just want to end this how we began this journey, and every time we pull a group of people together, and Christy's done this with you all, every time we work with a group, we really start with centering in that student experience and what we want our students to leave us with through that lens. So for the MAP team, when we first met with them over a year ago, this was that first discussion we had. It's like, what do you want kids to leave and being able to do? And so that those sticky notes represent all of their ideas, and then we grouped them. So we just are really excited to have the chance to fulfill the promise of what these post-its represent through this process. So we appreciate your time and letting us share that with you, and we're really excited to move forward. And we'll be back soon about science, don't worry.
I have a question. So I knew at the middle school level, there's an offer of like an advanced math class, right? So I'm curious, when I see here, we piloted the math at the middle school level, would this be for advanced class only, a combination of both?
Which? The 6-8 materials cover all 6-8 classes.
Okay.
So currently, there are currently some accelerated courses, and what that usually looks like is the, like, for instance, the 6th and 7th grade standards being sort of condensed and a higher prioritization of priority standards, if you will, and so it's still the same materials and standards, the pacing is just a little bit different. That makes sense. So it's the same materials is the short answer.
Okay, so all students, regardless of math,
Yes.
were exposed to it.
Yes.
This is super exciting stuff. I mean, everything from, how we as a district are taking the lead of what the state is doing, and it's finally opening up math curriculum, right? Like, math isn't a rigid subject that acts as a sieve for students to enter into a career or, continue their post-secondary education. Like, this opens up a multitude of different pathways, whether it's constructive geometry, financial algebra, medical math. This is so exciting, and I'm beyond thankful that we're having an opportunity to not only pilot it in the district, but move forward, offering these opportunities to our students. I mean, even the data reasoning stuff, like, we're seeing that at the post-secondary level. There's a bunch of new bachelor's degrees just focus on data reasoning, data analysis. And so the fact that we're able to offer that at the secondary level, or even at middle school level, that is great. And I spoke to the coding aspect earlier, but the more exposure we can give to our students and our families of like what's out there in the world, right? The more exciting it is. So I couldn't support this enough. Very proud of the work that y'all did. Thank you for saying this.
I do have one question. So you said 32 teachers in elementary. So how is that broken down between K through 5? Like, is it kind of random, or is it kind of evened out into them?
It was really purposeful in recruiting and communicating with pilot teachers. We wanted to have a representation of all 4 elementary schools, as well as the different language strands being represented, and we tried to do that both with the pilot teachers, but also within the materials adoption committee, making sure that we had teachers from every grade level, from the different language strands. We, one of the members of the committee was one of the language program coordinators. So really just trying to make sure that everyone had a voice at the table through the selection process.
But still, so like, out of the 32, was it kind of, you're saying it's spread out through those 4?
Yeah.
And through the 4 grades, it wasn't like bulked into more.
Right, so it
Fourth
was
or
all 5
first or
grade
third.
levels and then,
Sixth
grade
level.
Because of
K.
Yes. But yes, it wasn't like exactly even for every single grade level, we tried very hard and there was representation.
And I don't know as much about the spring pilot, but the fall extended pilot, we had. Kindergarten, we only had 1, but first, second, third, fourth, and fifth, we had an English strand teacher and a Spanish strand teacher doing the extended pilot.
Yes. Thank you.
I don't have a question, but I have visited Valor and I visited, I believe, Chris's classroom as well as her colleague. I can't think of his name right now. But I just want to acknowledge the great work that they're doing with our students, our middle schoolers. It's been great to see them just engage in math and like math. And so I just wanted to appreciate her for the work that she's doing. And I'm sure there's other teachers, but I see her, and so I just wanted to acknowledge the work that's happening. Thank you.
And just with the engagement, I just want to commend the team too, like, you know, taking a parent engagement rather than hosting an event here. The office that you have here, going out to the schools and going to places, going to conferences, going to where there's going to be a lot of families and getting out in front of them, those events. The policy practice, I would say that is.
Yeah, and then like Naomi said that students show that they enjoy math because when they're struggling and they don't have the slides, they don't have the assistants, they don't have the small groups, then there's more likely chance of them failing because there's a more likely chance of them overcoming the struggles. But, thank you.
Thank you. So it seems like we don't have additional questions, but I would entertain a motion to adopt the math material. As it was presented.
I'll move the motion to accept the mathematics math material adoption.
And I second it.
All in favor of adopting the math material that we presented, say aye.
Aye.
It's very good. Okay. Moving along to our next item is OSBA elections. So we do need a motion for each of these items. So we have the OSB election, so we have the OSB board director position 11 and 12, OSB legislation, policy committee positions 11 and 12, resolutions 1 and resolution 2. Do we need to go through each one of these? Do you share about them or?
We can have a discussion, in the memo, it was everyone's. It was linked in there, the bios and. What the resolutions are.
So for the OSBA board of directors position, we want. Discussion. I did review the candidates. If there are no questions, I do have a motion. I,
I was gonna say,
or we can take a moment to.
I have a couple of copies, I don't know if we have a copy, but I have a couple.
Actually, I can go without.
Can I get one?
The top ones are the resolutions and then the candidate info is.
Yeah, one other. Yeah.
I can start with the motion. I move that the board cast a yes vote for Ashley Carson Cunningham for position 11 on the LFBA board of directors.
All in.
You call for discussion, if you want to have discussion, or you can call for the vote.
Okay, discussion of questions. I do have a comment to state. I mean, if I remember correctly, I think my vote would be for Jeffrey. And the reason for that is, in looking, I don't know if you had a chance to look at his application. But I think one thing that really stood out to me is, just really addressing, you know, the political and ideological divide. So really focusing on students. And that is what stood out to me the most from that.
This is a little interesting, you'll still call for a vote. And then you'll have to entertain another motion to vote. He said yes vote to, well, let's say it failed. And you want to vote for Jeff, then someone has to move to make that motion for Jeff. So you still have to call a roll vote for this, since there's a second already.
Any other thoughts or questions? So we'll go ahead and vote. So the vote would be to. So So the motion was to, that the board cast a yes vote for Ashley Carson Cunningham for position 11 on the OSBA Board of Directors. All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
Opposed.
Oh, nay, sorry, I was reading.
So 3-2. OSBA Board of Directors, position 12, we have Alonso Oliveros is running unopposed.
Sorry, you still haven't voted for
You haven't
anyone.
finished
It was
it. Oh, we
no for Ashley.
Oh, okay, so then you need to make a
The
motion.
motion for
You need
Jeff.
the motion.
Right.
You're trying to,
Got it.
so yes, vote for.
All right, so I need to.
I know that the board cast the yes vote for Jeffrey Crapper. For position 11 on the OSBA Board of Directors.
Is there a second?
I second it.
All in favor, to cast a yes vote for Jeffrey Pepper, for position 11 on the NC Board of Directors.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? We abstaining? Oh, did I? Oh, sorry about that. Okay. Motion carried. Motion carried. Move on to the next one. OSBA Board of Directors, position 12. We have one candidate, Alonso Oliveros is running unopposed.
I move that the board cast a yes vote for Alonso Oliveros of position 12 that will CA Board of Directors.
Is there a second? Second. All in favor?
Call first, I don't know if you would like. You didn't have to spend comments.
Oh, sorry. Discussion, questions? If we don't have questions or discussion, are we ready to move on? So all in favor, casting a yes to vote for Alonso Oliveros for position 12 on the OSBA Board of Directors, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Next candidate is the OSBA Legislative Policy Committee, position 11. And we have one candidate, Maria Hinosos Presley, is running unopposed.
I move that the board cast a yes vote for Maria Hinosos Presley for position 11 on the OSBA Legislative Policy Committee.
I second.
So,
Yeah.
oh, sorry. Second, yeah, I don't know.
Any discussion and questions? We'll move on to a vote. All in favor of casting a yes vote for Maria Hinosos Presley for position 11 on the LSBA Legislative Policy Committee. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Motion passes. All right. OSC Legislative Policy Committee, position 12. We have two candidates.
I move that the board cast a yes vote for Merle Stutzman for position 12.
I second it.
Sorry.
Discussion, question? No discussion?
None.
So all in favor to cast a yes vote for Marley Smith for position 12 on the OSB Legislative Policy Committee, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Alright,
No.
What's your vote on?
I'm gonna abstain to this one.
And so we don't have discussion.
Motion carries so it's to be.
Motion carries, we have 3-1, no one abstaining. Okay, and so the next one, I'm gonna introduce. The resolution one.
And if you go to the memo. It. Tells you what the resolution.
So resolution 1 creates the Oregon Rural School Board Members Office and designates a seat on the OSBA Board of Directors and LPC.
Move that the board supports OSBA resolution 1 as stated above.
second,
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And our final resolution 2 adopts the proposed amendments to the OSBA bylaws.
we didn't have an opportunity for discussion on one, but it would have been.
We can go ahead.
You have discussions.
Okay.
You have to admit, if you were trying to change the vote, you have to admit, but you're all.
Let's talk about it.
Thanks.
Like the history of it, so the rural, it's called the Rural Caucus, but I think it's changed the name a little bit now. It's super exciting when we see students across the state of Oregon, particularly from our rural communities, lag when it comes to everything from access to even issues around like how people are at their districts and stuff. So the more advocates that they have at the statewide level, I think it really helps to uplift all of our schools across the state. And I wanted to speak to this a little bit because in I was around this conversation had just started, and like how difficult it was to even come up with a definition of a rural school district, right? Like North Marion, right up the street, their governor Bill Brown was adamant that North Marion was a rural school district. Rightfully so. And other folks across the state were like, no, it's right in between Wilsonville, it's right off the I-5 corridor. Like, what are you talking about? North Marion's not rural. And so just like the aspects of, you know, how do you define a rural school district? It took 8 months or something like that to like come up with a solid definition of what is a rural school district. And I think that speaks to like Oregon, right? Oregon's kind of different. Just something to think about. I know every time when I get in discussions around like rural policy, rural advocacy, the conversation around like what defines a rural school district? Is it the size of the student population? Is it the per student per square mile? Like what's the definition of a rural school? Because each rural community has a different definition of it. Some rural communities are like, yes, you're part of, you know, the rural club. Other school districts are like, we're rural. And other rural districts are like, no, you're not, you know. So I thought it was fascinating as a board member to hear different perspectives. And I just wanted to share.
Well, yeah, especially, but if you compare North Marion to St. Paul would be considered more rural versus North Marion because of of course, the community, the population, and how big the town is. And then like Jervis, it's growing, but 10 years ago, you definitely consider it rural versus not. So, or 20 years ago.
I think a lot of people determine just by sight, you know, like you said, you go to North Marion or St. Paul, it's like, oh yeah, it's definitely rural. But regardless, you know, like you said, definition hard, but I think the fascinating, exciting thing is it's gonna give them a voice, which is the most important thing. And that's why I was like, oh yeah, and you know, because that's part of our job is to give our community a voice. However, now we have taken our responsibility and extended that to hopefully making it a louder voice for them to be involved in.
Like going to the August conference and then to the November conference. It's amazing to see how many tiny little communities want to be seen, heard, and involved, and they weren't able to. And they've had a lot of flourishing students that now are teachers or administrators, and they need to show the highlights about that.
Exciting.
Discussion. Alright, so we got a vote. So we can. All right, resolution 2. Adopt the proposed amendments to the OSBA bylaw.
I move that the board supports OSBA resolution 2 as stated above.
Any discussion, questions?
We continue just giving additional voice, whether it's at different policy level committees or statewide committees. It elevates a couple different positions across the state. Chair and real Congress. A seat on the OSBA board, most voting member on the OSBA board of directors. Again, just adding that voice, that advocacy to just and in a way that hasn't been there in the past.
Well, we are supporting the OSBA resolution. As stated above.
Aye.
Next item on our agenda is approved superintendent contract. We all have the other contract. Have questions and discussion around the process.
So about this question, this has a start date of January 1. Do we need to do anything with the current contract that extends past the January 1 date?
Do we need to do it? No, it'll end when this one comes into effect. But we will have, we have a check-in, like we planned with our timeline in December, and so we can ask some specific questions when any changes, like we adopted goals, for example. So the discussion that we can have then in executive session.
Thank you.
There are no questions or discussion. I would entertain a motion to adopt the superintendent's contract as presented.
I do have one question. So, just for clarification. So. During summer school, when we do have summer school. He's not required to be there, right?
Same process question.
I think that's a contract question, so, if you look at number 4.
Right.
So the superintendent required to run their 260 days of full arraignment to the district. So the 260 days is a full, school year, including July.
Including July. Okay, thanks. Thank you.
I move the motion to approve superintendent's contract.
Who's second?
The three of them.
All in favor of adopting the superintendent's contract as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next item is future agenda items. Do we have any requests for future agenda items?
Back to assessments, we've talked about assessments several times, we've heard about the map testing. Stuff, I just want a better understanding as a board member, like, what's the minimum requirement of assessment that we need to do to check the boxes with the state? And any other additional assessments that we're doing, that goes beyond that, is it meaningful, is it helpful, how are we using the data? It's a teeter totter, right? It's like the more our educators spend time teaching to the test, quote unquote, it's less time that our students get this quality of instruction, access to quality instruction. I just want more.
Yeah, that's a good question. But I'm also thinking there was a presentation earlier in the school year.
And we did it sort of at the work session of the October 10th, we dove into that and looked at that topic. That within the framework of a multi-tier system support system, so we ran through that, but if there's some more specific questions, provide those in an email or understanding of the need or request. Maybe board members and looking forward to get those answers for you.
So I'm just kind of wondering, based on what was already presented, what other condition? Yes. Other agenda items that you would like to see in reports?
We had some items last time we had the meeting on November, what was it, the 12th?
Yeah, I think Jenny.
Yeah, so we have a few items already there, so we don't. If it's late, then we cannot think of any other subjects besides data and a little bit of more details. I guess we could go back to our list from this work session.
Now we have a list of agenda items that were generated previously that will be the calendar out. Next December's meeting will be the first school report we'll be hearing this year. We'll be hearing from the high school. And with that, we'll be scheduling a time for the board to go to the tour and see things in action. So Tuesday, the 12th. The board meeting and then providing the board to come and join us at the high school in 14th. So there's time to visit there.
The 14th.
Yeah, there's. In the afternoon. Yeah, we get specific times. Okay. So we'd like to set that up as a practice, 17th, and we'll hear from the school on Tuesday, and then schedule and go right to the school on the Thursday. That'll be that.
Isn't that also that gift event?
That's 9 to
The 14th.
Oh,
that's 9 to 11.
yeah, talk about firefighters, the morning.
That's 9 to 11 from the night. 9 to 11.
And you said it's in the afternoon at the
Yes.
high school.
Yeah.
During school hours?
Yeah, during school hours, opportunity to go and visit the school, visit the classrooms and tour and see what you hear about at the board meeting in person interaction.
Does Thursday not work or just
Thursday, that's not.
that particular Thursday or just Thursdays?
No, that day, that's doesn't work,
Yeah.
because I'm in Roseburg.
I'll be gone. Thursday, Friday.
On every day, so I can be flexible. I just pick up I start kid pickup at 2, so ideally before 2, because. I pick up little ones, sorry. Well, it's I pick up my youngest at 2 every school, so 2 and then 2:20 for the elementary.
The elementary.
And then 3:30 for my kids.
Yeah.
So, we'll move on.
Friday will be possibility.
It's the Friday before the,
Yeah,
The
that was the
last day.
that's the last day of school.
yeah, for the break, so,
That's kind of hectic for them.
I know.
yeah, it may not be such an authentic snapshot, but when you see the last, the Friday before the break.
Do you have a timeframe for that one?
No, but it may perhaps be able to send out to a poll to that afternoon here before 2 o'clock. And we'll be trying to find a snapshot of window in the afternoon that would work for the inventory. We have to make the high school principal, and that Thursday afternoon. Afternoon works.
Definitely.
Has to be after.
If there's no other discussion or other agenda items, we can move on to our last agenda item, which is the board calendar. Next meeting is December 12th, January 9th, and January 23rd.
I'm not here on the ninth. Just. Normally. If I have access to internet. Well, and 20 something, chat. We'll cover this.
All right, so we reached the end of our agenda. Thank you everyone for joining us. It is past 9 o'clock, so thank you for being there. We will now move to adjourn our meeting.
Now you like take a picture.